Hi, my name is Mike Quill. I'm a filmmaker, director, and cinematographer. I also teach a production course at Northeastern University. And today we're going to talk about anamorphic lenses. Welcome everyone, thank you for coming. Basic history of anamorphic lenses is that when film was invented in the, around the turn of the century, the image was essentially square. Technically, the aspect ratio was probably more like 4:3. Now, I don't know if you recall growing up, tube TVs, like the old-fashioned kind of TVs that were more square. Was that part of your childhood, or? TVs basically emulated what the traditional aspect ratio of film was. But when they came out, people started going to the movie theaters less. And so filmmakers wanted a way to get people back into the theater. So they developed a widescreen format called 239, and they did that by inventing anamorphic lenses. And an anamorphic lens is different than a regular spherical lens because it has 3 layers of glass inside the lens, and the way it's designed is that it distorts light when it comes through, and it basically squishes the image onto the sensor in a square way, and then in post you de-squeeze it and it gives you the correct widescreen effect. You might be familiar with anamorphic lenses through, some of your favorite filmmakers like Wes Anderson or P.T. Anderson or a movie like Aliens. It's that really epic horizontal frame. Oftentimes there's a lot of lens flares, blue streaks, and ovular bokeh in the background. They're really wonderful lenses, and I use them a lot on my films, my music videos, even sometimes commercials.
I've heard that anamorphic lenses, and especially these old lenses that might be busted up, are not as perfect as these new lenses. So why would you want to use something that's imperfect?
With the advent of these new cinema cameras, the image quality is so good that it's too sharp, it's too clinical. So vintage lenses in general have become super popular because it kind of takes that digital edge off the image and it gives it a more organic vibe, but particularly anamorphics because they have tons of amazing character that is imperfect, and that's what we're going for. You can do 2:3:5 aspect ratio by just putting a matte on the top and bottom of your image and shoot with spherical lenses. That will give you the aspect ratio you're looking for, but it doesn't give you the attributes of real anamorphic lenses. What I want to do now is demonstrate with my camera assistants the proper way to handle lenses. In terms of lens cleaning, briefly, you want to come over here? Wow, there's a big fingerprint right on the front. So that's kind of a problem because it might come into the image. But first you want to face it down and use a blower and get all the dust or any kind of grime that might be on there. Blow it off, and then take a Kim wipe here, which this is kind of the brand you want to use for cleaning lenses. And
is it dry? Or?
Yeah, so right now it's dry, so you never want to apply a dry cloth to a piece of glass. Okay. So you want to use Pancro, it's lens cleaner. It's the preferred one. And you do a couple sprays like that. And then you start in the center, circular movements clockwise. You work your way out to the edges of the lens. And once you remove the tissue from the lens, you throw it away. You never go back because now it's got dirt on it and that could scratch the lens. All right, so now it's looking pretty clean, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot better.
So is it normally we need to clean the lens very frequently, or?
No, you don't want to clean it more than you need to. You don't clean it on every shoot just because it's, you want to clean it, because every time you apply this chemical, you are potentially stripping the coating from the lens. And once you take the coating off, you can't really get it back on. So that's how you clean a lens. The next thing I want to do is show the proper way to handle lenses and how to mount the lens onto the camera. When the camera operator says, let's swing to a different lens, the first step is the assistant removes the current lens from the camera. Right?
Yeah, got it.
Great. And it's always important, you never bring a lens to the operator with either cap on. You always leave the caps in the case. That's important because the caps don't get lost, and also it's less things for the person putting the lens on the camera to juggle.
We are changing it to 50 millimeters.
Okay, yeah, so let's swing to a 50.
Got it.
Got it, great. Lens facing down is always put into the palm. Okay, there we go. Great, excellent. Once we do that, we just throw in the map box. Like that. All right, so now let's introduce our on-camera talent, Abby and Trisha, and we're gonna start looking at the attributes of anamorphics. Right now we've got the 35 millimeter square front on the FX3, and as you can see, it's a super wide image. It's the widest of the set. One of the challenging parts of anamorphics is sometimes it's hard to judge focus. So it's really important that you've got good focus tools on your monitor to check critical focus. What are you guys seeing in terms of the quality of the image?
The oval bokeh?
Yeah, oval bokeh. So with traditional spherical lenses, the out of focus bokeh is usually round. And with anamorphic, because of the stretch factor, it creates an ovular bokeh. So you can see with the Christmas lights, they're really stretched vertically.
Could you explain what you mean by bokeh more?
Yeah, so bokeh is basically how the out of focus part of the frame is rendered. And we're usually talking about how out of focus highlights are rendered. What I really want to show is flaring. The Lomo anamorphics are really famous for their lens flares. So you can see all sorts of crazy refractions going on and flaring. Ultimately, you don't want it to be too distracting, but the best instance of flares in a scene is when it's kind of like happening naturally. Okay, now we've swung to the 50 millimeter square front anamorphic. And as you can see, we're a lot tighter. One thing I'm noticing is that the bokeh is really much more pronounced here. The focus is really shallow now. And one thing I want to point out about anamorphic lenses is that you get a wider field of view, but more compression. So you get a wider frame that has a more shallow depth of field.
I think it's interesting how there's like a teardrop quality to the bokeh on the outsides.
Oh yeah.
Versus the very like oval shape of the ones in the middle.
Because there's a lot more elements within the anamorphic lenses, do you usually have to use more outside light sources?
That's a great question. Anamorphics are usually a lot slower than spherical lenses. So like a spherical lens, you could get a lens that's like a f1.2. With anamorphics, the fastest that you're really gonna see is 2.8. You need a lot more light. In fact, generally, shooting wide open, you're not gonna get as sharp of an image. Because there's so many glass elements involved, you kind of need to stop down the lens to ideally maybe a 4 or a 5.6 in order to get proper sharpness. You have to think about like what's the best tool for the job. For example, if you're shooting in, let's say, a small apartment, you might actually want to go for anamorphics because it gives you that wider field of view. You're going to be able to see more of the space, whereas if you were shooting with spherical lenses in a small apartment, you'd be inclined to do what? Use a wider lens. The problem with that, yeah, exactly, is it'll give you more distortion. So that's the beauty of anamorphics, is because of the wide aspect ratio, we see more of the environment, but we have the compression of a longer lens. The other issue with especially older anamorphics is the close focus isn't very good. Close focus is the minimum plane in which you can focus the lens. So what you do in those situations, you use diopters. Right here is a +1. If you look through it, it's like a magnifying glass. So you stick this in front of the lens, and it gives you better minimum focus. The trade-off, though, is that you can no longer achieve infinity focus. Now, Trisha's gone because she couldn't fit in the frame anymore, because we're on the 80 millimeter. Abby is really popping. The background is super soft, and this bokeh is just getting more and more intense. So that concludes our demo for today. I just want to thank everyone who came out. I have about 15 current and former students here, and it's a Saturday, but thank you again for coming out, and until next time.